Hey everyone, good morning. It's Rebecca Undum, and you are tuning in to our Monday morning Facebook Live show, the Rebecca Undum Live show, where every single Monday, rain, shine, vacations or not, sometimes our timing's a little different, but I always show up here with you guys on Monday mornings, and we talk about one simple thing to help you live big in your small town. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I think Cindy is on. Good morning, Cindy. Happy to see you here. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope that you guys had a fantastic weekend. And Father's Day, you were able to celebrate the dads either with you or that have been with you. I know it's always a hard day for some that have lost their dads or that person that held that spot in their lives. So I hope that you were able to celebrate the men in your life that hold that role. We went to a Red Hawks game, had a great weekend. So it was really fun time. Good morning, Cindy. So nice to see you. Okay, so today we are continuing with our theme. The monthly theme for June is creativity. And I think, again, I'm going to reiterate that I think as a general idea, this topic is kind of boring, kind of flat. But today we're talking about why we need it at home. And so and any of you that have followed me for any amount of time, you know that I'm not a big fan of this compartmentalization of what happens to you at work and what happens to you at home. I believe we are one person and we move through the world no matter where we're at. And I want people to be able to live one full life instead of a compartmentalized life where you're like kick ass at work and then you're sad at home or vice versa. I want people to know that you can be, and if you don't feel like you can fully be yourself at work, then maybe you're not in the right place, that kind of thing. So this whole idea of creativity, we talked last week about why we need it in business and at work. But today it's really about why we need it at home, why we need to foster it at home. And so today is a little bit, I would say, well, and not even just, but kind of parent driven. Like I think about this a lot because I'm a mom and I've got children, and children, of course, raising kids is like the hardest job. I'm sure you can all agree with that. So I'm going to be talking a lot about why it's important when we're talking about raising children, but this is important just for relationships too. So if you live with somebody, if you have roommates, if you have a spouse, we're going to be talking about creativity and why it matters. So we've got, it looks like Taylor might be still with us, Lorena and Randy. Good morning, ladies. Please say good morning. I would love to see your faces and just know that you're with me. And so a hi or a good morning or whatever you got for me would be awesome. You gonna shut my door? Okay, go ahead. Speaking of creativity, that's my son, just like mom. I had to ask him to shut the TV off and he just turned it down. So now he had to shut my door because I'm being too noisy for him. Okay, so real quick, hey, Randy, good morning. So I'd love to know too if any of you are just getting your asses handed to you by the summer schedule. It has been, like, I think it was the first June session that we talked about when we first talked about creativity. I said it was the busiest week of my entire year, and it was, and it doesn't feel like it stopped. So we're talking creativity today. I will tell you what I need from anybody who can give me some ideas. I did a little Google of like chore charts and stuff yesterday, and I'm just not enamored with any of them. So if any of you guys have some really great ideas for, okay, I have a couple things. One, I've got a 6-year-old that literally cannot remember what he's responsible for. So it's not so much a chore chart, it's just a morning routine. Like I really think a visual chart would help him. So I'm wondering if you have any resources for me on that. And then my older son, I need to get him some sort of an expectation chart, right? Like, I don't care if it's a chart so much, but we need to have some method of like, these are the things you have to do and I expect you to do every day. And some of them are going to be like reading. I bought him and his brother each their own little summer journal. I do expect them to do some writing. I want them to be kids, of course, but I've never been a free range mom. Like I don't just let my kids run wild. And not saying that that's wrong, like if that's your thing, but I feel a little bit like that's what we do now. He just runs wild and I'm really struggling. So if you guys have any great ideas to help me with this is creativity at home. Like we're right on topic, right on point. I'll be sharing this in the Groove Seekers community, of course, too. But if you guys got some for me, man, I would take any suggestions. Tara, she's a teacher. Maybe she's got something for me. Randy says she needs the same. It has to be on a list every day that they check off. Yeah, I feel like the visual part of this, Randy, like I agree. I think it's not so much that I want to chart their stuff. Like I don't want it to feel like that. But like there's 4 things, my 6-year-old, 4 that he has to remember for T-ball. And he even has a bag to put them in, like there's a spot designated. None of it matters. He can't remember all 4 things every single time. So I need help, friends. If you guys got anything for me, let me know. And actually, I'll post this. So I'll just tell you this. I'll post it in the Groove Seekers community. So if you've got time and you're willing to share some ideas, I know I can't be the only mom. So ladies, check it out. We'll take that conversation over to the group and we'll talk about it there. So, okay. So sorry, I just had to ask for help. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? So what? You guys are hanging out live with me. I can't be the only one struggling with this. So maybe we need to talk about it. Okay, so let's talk about creativity. So I think there are several things that it fosters, and we're going to talk specifically about 4 of them because, again, if we go back to the start of the month when we first talked about what creativity is, it is not artistic expression alone. So when I say artistic expression, it is not simply drawing, painting, writing, composing music. It's not even just musical. Those are the things we tend to think of, like the arts. That is not all creativity is. Creativity is really an expanding of the mind. And so that's what we're going to talk about, being able to see different perspectives, being open-minded, being growth-minded, right? Versus fixed-minded. And so that mindset. So we're going to talk about 4 specific things. And as we chat, other things might come up, but I really want to know which of these resonates with you. And I think a lot about this as being a mom, but I think these things are all really important for being good spouses too. So it's really about how we nurture those relationships that are right at home with us. So the first thing, creativity, when we nurture creativity, what it also fosters is resilience. So I'm a big fan of helping my kids understand, and it's hard. This is hard. It's hard because I am a perfectionist by nature. So naturally, I don't like to embark on things that I'm not going to be good at right out of the gate. And I know that that's not realistic, and I know that that's not practical, but it's still how I'm wired. I'm wired to want to do things well. So this idea of resilience and recognizing that as you're building a skill, you're going to really, really stink at it right away. And to have that open-mindedness to keep trying and possibly to tweak your approach, that's creativity. You almost can't become resilient without creativity. So again, with this, for me as a parent, I think about helping my children learn how to fail and actually embrace it, right? That if you're not making mistakes and you're not screwing up, then you're not really learning anything and you're not really growing. And I really struggle, I'll just say, so I've got 3 kids. So also this whole discussion of creativity, any of you that are moms on this, listening, hanging with me right now, are any of your children the same? Do they act the same? Do they think the same? Do they approach problems the same? I'm guessing probably not. Like that alone requires creativity on the part of a parent, because damn if it's not difficult. Like they're so different and they're wired so differently. And of course we want to nurture that and foster that expression of their individuality. But how do you do that when you're also limited by what you're capable of, right? And then if you have a spouse, if you're fortunate enough to be married and have a spouse and you're co-parenting with somebody, they have their own like strengths and limitations. So I think parenting is one giant freaking creative process. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but this idea of resilience, it's really hard. My oldest son is a lot like me. He's super competitive. He really likes to win. And so when he does something and he's not naturally inclined to be good at it, he gets easily frustrated and hits his limit. He hits his frustration limit fast. So for me, creativity is about saying like, okay, let's take a step back, like helping him work through the fact that, yeah, it's okay that you're not great at it right now. You're a beginner, you're new. So resilience. And this, I think, again, everyone, like these are life skills. These are things that are so important. It actually is something we talked about when we talked about creativity in business. Like you need it. Resilience is something we all need. Because if we think, well, and I think too, I kind of talked about this in the beginning when we first talked about creativity. I think sometimes our school is designed to honor achievement, right? Instead of the hard work and the work ethic it takes necessarily to earn a skill or to achieve a skill. And so it's all about like the end result and not necessarily about the journey. Resilience is all about the journey and helping kids bounce back when they fail. Okay. So again, as we talk about these, I would love to know, like, does that resonate with you? And does that make sense how creativity is tied to these things? So don't be silent. Hang out with me and actually talk to me. I would love to hear what you guys think. Okay. Number 2, the second thing that a focus on creativity. So if we nurture creativity, we can also help foster or nurture the second one is empathy. Okay, so I started my personal development or professional development career with Dale Carnegie Training, and I still work for them. Sometimes I'm a contracted employee with the franchise here in North Dakota. Dale Carnegie wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie's book is all about people. And I have moved into my professional career. I've left jobs, frankly, because people matter. And people are not just a resource. They are not just an asset. They are the thing that matters more than anything to me. And again, like this is partly because of how I'm wired and what my personality is. But I don't think anybody can argue with the importance of learning empathy. And so empathy, why creativity, how creativity is tied to empathy is really just the fact that it sometimes is hard. So empathy is that ability to step into the shoes of another person, right? Or to honestly be able to look at how someone might be feeling and at least attempt to understand it. It's not like we always can. Like there are times like my husband, I don't understand what he's thinking or how he feels about things, but empathy means that I care enough to try, right? So creativity is what allows us to say, okay, I have one limited perspective here. These other people, especially if you care about them, your kids, your spouse, your family, we should care enough to try and figure out where they might be coming from. And empathy is just something that, again, I feel in the world that we live in now, but not only has it declined, but it's almost freaking non-existent. I can't believe the way people talk to each other online, especially. And the idea that you forget that there's a real person with a real heart and a real soul and real feelings and real ideas, just a human being sitting on the other side of that. I don't understand how we've lost the ability to do that, to see that. But that's why I think it matters more now than ever. So as our kids become more technologically connected as well, I am going to dig my heels in hardcore about them being able to look people in the eye. I make my children order their own food at restaurants. This is one silly little thing that I just take really seriously. My husband's always like, God, we don't have time. Because a lot of times we were eating out this weekend when we were up in Fargo, and I'll look at she's 3, right? And I'll say, look at her. And usually I try to see the person's name, and I'll say, look at Sarah and tell Sarah what you'd like. And by the time we get to her, she can't remember what she wanted, and I have to help her anyway. But I think, getting our kids to do those things, that being able to build that interpersonal skill set is really important. They need to be able to look people in the eye, and they need to be able to communicate, and empathy is all tied into that. So I think when we can think about how can we be creative, how can we creatively come up with ways for our kids to build those skill sets and see people as human beings that are worthy of connection and are worthy of our time, that's how empathy naturally becomes a result of that. Okay. All right. So far I haven't had anything other than Randy's comment, like she needs lists to check off, and we're going to do that in the Groove Seekers community. But what do you guys think about this? So first was resilience. Second was empathy. Do you see these things in your kids? Are these things that you feel like you take seriously as a parent? And then again, I think as a spouse, having empathy for my spouse's opinion is really, really important. And I totally suck at it sometimes. Again, I'll be honest. The reason is because we're like, so if you guys have ever done the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ, and I like study it, and I've trained on it and stuff. So I kind of love it. I geek out over the things. My husband, he hasn't ever taken the test, but I'm quite certain that every single letter is the opposite letter of mine. And so we just view the world completely differently. So it really forces me to get out of my own head, open my mind, and think, okay, if I were wired like him, what would I think and what would I want and how would I feel, right? Okay, number 3, when we focus more and foster creativity, it allows us to let go of achievement. Okay, so again, really hard. I grew up in a school environment where it was all about my grades. It wasn't necessarily about what I learned to get the grades. Like we literally, it was, you succeeded or you didn't, and it was all based on how well you performed. And really life, and I don't know again, I would love to hear what you guys think about this. We need to stop caring so damn much about whether or not they achieve the thing, and care more about what it is that they learned in the process. because learning isn't about achievement. Learning is a journey, right? And it's lifelong, it's continuous. So that whole idea that we focus so damn much on achievement, it's kind of funny because I'm on a I'm like on a life journey, right? I'm never going to be done. So if achievement's the goal, what am I striving for? I want to just get better. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to develop things in myself. And that's what I want for my kids. It's absolutely what I want for my spouse. When he hits, my husband runs a business, and there are times where he gets really focused on specific goals and specific achievements. And I actually try to help him and just say, okay, yeah, but so we fell short of the goal, or you didn't make this happen, but what would you do differently next time? What did you learn so that either you can nail it next time, or maybe the goal was wrong, right? Just having a whole discussion about what happened between, the start of your goal and falling short of your goal, instead of just focusing on the falling short. And that kind of goes back to resilience too, but it's a huge part of helping our kids develop the mindset that I don't have to nail it all perfectly, but I need to keep trying. Okay. And then number 4, and this I'm going to say just flat out as a mom, this is something I struggle with more than just about anything else. And it is really about being able to nurture their freedom of individuality, like nurturing that expression, that freedom of expression, that expression of who they are as people. I have to just stop being so damn bossy sometimes. Because here's the thing, guys. And again, like, I would love a comment or two just to know that you're even still hanging with me. Because some of you are, I see you guys here. So tell me what you guys are thinking. But one of the things I struggle with the most is that I tend to be kind of a strict mom. Okay. And I'm not apologizing necessarily for that. But where I know that sometimes my rigidity gets me into trouble is that I tend to discipline around things that they're not actually doing anything wrong. It's just annoyances to me. So as a mom, when I find myself being annoyed by something, so like, again, I've got an older child, a boy who's, wired quite a bit like me. And yet there are things he does. So sometimes he's kind of lazy and he doesn't give his best effort. And that's something I'm constantly on him about, right? Well, then our second child is very much like a free little spirit. And so it's not that he doesn't care about rules. He likes to follow rules. But like, okay, so we took him to the Red Hawks game. We were in Fargo at a baseball game. I swear to you guys, there are times when my husband and I will look at each other and I'll be like, it's like we've never taken these children out in public before. They're just they're like unruly, and they run into people. Like, that's one of my biggest things. They don't pay attention. Like my middle child, and then she's only 3, but they don't pay attention to the people around them. They don't pay attention to their surroundings. So they're constantly like running into people. And I seriously just want to lose my shit. I'm like, you guys. And so I feel like I'm constantly going, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Now they're young, right? And yes, I think teaching them social, like cues is super important. But there are times that I get like crazy fixated on things that really aren't that big of a deal. And so this is something that I'm really going to work on in my own home, is how do I nurture the specialness in each of them? Because there is some super cool parts of each. I mean, they're beautiful, they're wonderful little children, but how do we nurture and support who they are as people, and not I a lot of times place adult expectations on my children. And again, I don't know what the balance is, you guys. I would love for you to freaking weigh in and tell me what you think, because I struggle with this a lot. Like, I want them to be well-mannered. I want them to be polite. I want them to be respectful. I want them to have empathy. I want them to be compassionate. Really, I want them to be good people. Like, that's my biggest thing, right? But how much of what I'm trying to force on them in my bossy mom tone, like how much of it is just because I don't want to be embarrassed? And that's something I really struggle with. Jeremiah and I, my husband, we've talked so much about how they can do something that the behavior is just embarrassing, but it's not wrong. It's just embarrassing. And not scold to that, because I don't want all of those, like, is this making sense to any of you guys? Do you feel this? Have you experienced this? Because it's hard for me. And I want to be a good mom that nurtures who they are, but I want them to also be well-behaved, right? So I think that's a balance. And that's something, again, with creativity, if we really think like, how can I think about this differently? And then finding outlets for each of them to kind of do their thing and be who they are in a space where like my embarrassment over it is limited is really, I think it's really important. Because, from early on, as soon as you hit school, right, as soon as you get into kindergarten, you start really paying attention to what everybody around you is doing. And the idea to conform, the need to conform it's really important, because that's what fitting in looks like. And we've talked so much in my membership group, Groove School, and just in some of these conversations, we've talked a lot about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And fitting in, when you do things to fit in, but that don't really feel like you might be fitting in with the people that you're with, but you don't belong to yourself. And in this whole conversation about at home, I want my husband to belong to me. I want my children to belong, not to me, but with me. And I want my children to belong with me. And the only way to do that is to make our home a safe place, the safest place for all of them. And sometimes I think with this fourth one, this allowing them to be who they want to be, I think sometimes I squelch that in them, and I make them feel not right, or not good enough, or not quite, it's right. It's like rightness. And I feel shitty about that. And so I'm sharing that with you because, again, like when I come to you guys with stuff on these Facebook Live calls, I'm not saying like I've mastered this and I've nailed this, but it's something I'm constantly working on. So Jesse said all the time, you do the same thing. So when your daughter gets crazy, you get embarrassed and you want to scold her. And I think as moms, like, this is the thing this is the gut check. And thank you for sharing that, Jesse, because I think this is the gut check for me, is that all of us moms, like, we want our kids to be accepted, don't we? We want our kids to fit in. We want our kids to belong. But the most important thing is that they belong to themselves first, and that they belong to us. Now, I'm a Christian, so like my kids belong to God, and that's really important to me. Like and again, that's not everybody's thing. I totally understand that. That's first and foremost, they belong to God. They belong with themselves. And I want them to feel safe and secure in who they are. And they can't feel secure if I'm constantly riding them. So that's a balance that I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to figure out, like, when do I need to step in, and when is it like, and I think most of them are always teachable moments. But sometimes I think I also squelch that creative expression in them, and I feel just crappy about it. So again, always a work in progress. So that's what I've got for you guys with creativity. And I think creativity at face value seems like a boring and simple topic. And yet when you think about how important it is from a life skill standpoint, especially if we are raising children, and then again, like, even if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're in a relationship with yourself, everyone. So really, these are 4 things that are really important for people to live a good, full life. So resilience is fostered, empathy is fostered, really the emphasis on the journey rather than achievement is fostered with creativity. And 4th is just that ability to be who you really are, that freedom of self-expression, which, gosh, I don't ever want my children to lose that. And I lost it. There was a period of time where I completely lost it, and it was high school. And then eventually you start to open your mind back up by hanging out with cool people and learning different things and reading different things, hopefully exploring different cultures if you get a chance to do that. But it's really, really important. And so I encourage you guys, and I'll post this. So not only am I asking for chore chart help, but I will post kind of a question over in the Groove Seekers community, because we should talk about this. What are some ways that you work through some of these things in your own households? Because as we all know, children watch us they learn by watching us, not necessarily by listening to us. So we also need to be able to model these things for them. Okay, so you got Lorena saying, having grown children, you understand this. There's a difference between teaching them manners and squelching creativity. There is, and I think for me, Lorena, sometimes I don't know what that line really looks like, and I know that I cross it. But I think the awareness of it is the start, right? I think that's always the start. If you catch yourself doing these things and you're at least aware of it in the moment, that's your head's above somebody that has their head stuck in the sand that they never do. And Jesse says, your daughter's very cautious. You have trouble balancing letting her be herself and pushing her to grow more confident, right? It's like the exact opposite of like a little free spirit that you're constantly trying to appropriately rein in. and then somebody that's so cautious that you're like, push yourself, get out there, do a little bit more, right? It's a tough balance. And I think as parents, we just constantly need to be not just thinking about it, but also thinking about what we're modeling. Because I think the whole thing is, if I want my children to feel like they belong to themselves, then I have to belong to myself, which means I have to confidently, and this whole idea of, I talk in my keynote, when we talk about being bold, I don't mean that like be confident, like have bravado and, be loud and be outspoken. It's being you. Being the fullest, most authentic version of you that you can be. I call it full strength you. And so that's what we're trying to teach our kids to be, right? And so Jesse, if you've got a daughter that tends to be more cautious, full strength her maybe is always going to be a little cautious, right? And she might grow at her own pace and she might grow in her own way, but that's just it, is how, how do we figure out who they really are and help them bring more of that out instead of pushing them to be what we think the world either needs them to be or what we need them to be so that we're more comfortable. It's a challenging thing. So we are going to post this in the Groove Seekers community because I just feel like this conversation has to continue beyond right now. But if nothing else, I hope it's some good food for thought for you guys today. And all I've got for a couple of announcements, I guess. Just two things. Again, Groove Seekers community, get yourself in there and we'll talk more about this there. And then secondly, I'm going to be offering another Big Life retreat coming up soon. So as soon as I make that available, I get the dates updated and live, I will let you guys know. But that was a fantastic offering. I didn't, again, like talking about embracing failure, sometimes you got to try things, right? And you never know if they're going to work. The Big Life retreat was a 4-hour live virtual workshop. I did it like a retreat. Everybody, all the feedback that I got from all the women that were there, where there's 12 women on it, they all said, several of them said, I was really afraid of what 4 hours virtual was going to be. Like, how are you going to keep us engaged? And the time freaking flew by. So I'm going to get that information out to you guys soon. It'll be happening in July. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, next week we're talking, finally, the last thing is about creativity in our communities / schools. So I encourage you to tune in for that discussion as well. And as always, until I see you all again, have an amazing week. Groove on. And I can't wait to hear and chat more with you guys about this topic because this one's an important one. Okay. Love you guys so much. Have an awesome week. Talk soon.